Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Water Wisdom Podcast. Before we dive in, please get your glass of water. And let's just come together for the next hour and really connect and exchange the codes that we all came to share with one another. You are in store for a beautiful, beautiful treat today. We have the amazing Heather Beebe. She's a wellness mentor and certified holistic health coach. And Baba Buddha, transformational spiritual guidance mentor. We're going to have an epic conversation with them. But first, take a breath, set the intention, let the codes flow into the water and be amplified to serve us all for our highest and greatest good. Take a swig. You're in for a treat, y'all. Okay, so now that we're past the formalities, which always makes me nervous, I hope I pronounced everyone's name right, and I hope I gave everyone's titles appropriately. Okay, now let's chill. Let's have an epic conversation with an amazing couple that is making massive, massive waves in the world. I found the two of these lovely gems through Baba. I found him first on TikTok doing breath work. And y'all know, if you've been following me for a while, I freaking love breath work. And I love the way that he had such a simple approach. He was very down to earth, very fun, had a beautiful vibe. And then I found the beautiful Heather, who is his lovely, lovely divine partner is what I'm going to call her. And I started looking at some of her work and was super intrigued. I actually really see myself in Heather. She's very vibrant and outspoken. She's an amazing wellness coach. And so I reached out to them and asked if they wanted to come on the podcast and share some love with all of us. So you're really in for a treat with this amazing conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about their divine union. I really want to talk about what they are creating as a couple, because so many of us have done so much work as individuals and are really opening our hearts to possibly creating a relationship with someone and doing it in a very different way, in a way that we've never been taught, in a way that we've never been shown, in a way that is busting through all of the old paradigms. And so I want to share some codes. I want some codes, okay? So we're going to have a great conversation about what they're creating together, go back in time and talk about their awakening journey a little bit, and then absolutely let you know how you can tap into their amazing offerings to the world. So enough of my blabbing. Let me open up the floor here to this beautiful, amazing these two beautiful, amazing humans. And I'm just going to open the floor and ask you all to introduce yourself and what your beautiful offering together to the world is.
Well, first of all, thank you so much, Monica, for that beautiful introduction. The feeling is likewise. I remember back when I first saw you on TikTok on my feed, and just the way that you began to create, content creation was very inspiring to me. It really helped me along my journey on TikTok to begin to create really, I think, impactful, content. So, I really appreciate you. I'm very excited to finally get to meet you, like in person, having a conversation. We've had a lot of interaction going back and forth, lots of support with one another. So I deeply appreciate you, and I deeply appreciate being on this podcast with you. And so does my lovely Heather Beebe.
Yeah.
If you want to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah. Good.
Go ahead.
Oh, so I too am so thankful, grateful to you for opening up this platform to us. And I firmly believe, I know we believe together, that all we have to do is start putting forth our passions, start putting what our deepest, authentic self feels and believes in. If we start putting it out into the world in some form, we're going to attract like-minded people. And those people are going to come into our lives, and opportunities can be presented, whether that's in the form of a podcast like this, or just you're going to make connections that are valuable and in line with your values and how you're living. So it's very special when those invitations start to come in and those connections start to be made, because that's when you know you are living authentically and you are living in line with what you believe. So thank you for this opportunity. And to kind of go into our mission together, it's kind of been developed over the course of our relationship. You know, we entered into a partnership both in a state of very deep growth and individually, and there's something magical when you meet somebody who's on their own growth journey and they have the same deep desire to grow with you, and you're coming together in a way that is not the same as you've gone into other relationships. You come together, like I know for us, our relationship was built off of very deep conversations, very real, sometimes hard conversations.
Yes, definitely challenging conversations.
Yeah, and conversations about where we both been, where we were, and where we wanted to go. And that, without us knowing it, that formed the foundation for I'll go ahead and say, like, the impactful relationship that we now have, the impact that we're able to bring to the world individually, but together as well. Because deep growth leads to deep impact, I believe.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And like I tell my clients all the time that, you know, until you really find that deep love for yourself, and I'm sure we've all heard this before, that, and if you haven't, this may be your first time hearing it, but, you know, you do not get what you want out of life, you get who you are. And so if you take that to a relationship, you know, they always say that, you know, really visualize the kind of person that you want in your life. And I did. I visualized a tall brunette with, you know, very powerful energy and very well-spoken and all these things, right? But then the flip of that is to say, okay, now become that person. And so that's the work that I did on myself. I became the kind of person that I wanted to have in my life. I started studying lots of energy work, and I became an Eastern Bodyworks massage therapist, and you know, I became a Qigong instructor, and then I started studying Reiki, and then I became a Reiki master. And actually, I wasn't a Reiki master yet, but I already studied Reiki. I was a Reiki level 2. And then, yeah, it's like it is like magic, but actually it's not magic. It's just manifestation. It's alignment. It's understanding that there's a frequency that we emit every single day, our dominant vibration. And when you want to call in that ideal partner, you become the frequency of it. And it was like magic. It was like we came into each other's path and we were there to really create, you know, this cohesive relationship from the beginning. And I remember right away thinking, I'm doing this relationship different. And right away, we started having those conversations that we're going to be like almost like well, we're either going to be together or we're not going to be together. And it was you know, those kind of conversations from the very beginning that helped us realize we're in this to see if we are the right fit. And it doesn't matter how difficult the conversations are, we'll have them. And it doesn't mean it's a make or break to the relationship. And that was really something that I found so refreshing, is that I can have the conversations that I was scared to have with other people because I would feel weak as a man, right? Because boys don't cry, right? And I would become very emotional in sharing my triggers, in sharing how something that was happening was triggering something inside of me, that young boy inside of me that has abandonment issues. I don't need to go into all of that, but you know, the triggers would come up, and I felt confident that I could share my triggers with her in a way that I could figure out why they were coming up. And it wasn't about saying they're coming up because of you. It's like they were coming up because of me. And when you're in a relationship like this, you are in a place where one another can grow with each other, because you will be triggered. And you will be triggered in a way that is a healing way of working through those triggers. And so we've been able to share with each other, hey, I'm triggered by this particular moment. I don't know a lot. Why? Can we have a conversation about it? And real quick, I just share something that didn't come from me, but I think is brilliant. And we've talked about this many times. Is if something comes up and it's an important conversation to one of us, then we can say, I think maybe it was from Tony Robbins. We can say, this conversation is like on a scale of a 1 to 10 to me. Like this conversation is like on a 7 to me. That lets our partner know that it's important for me to have this conversation. But then there's another one on an emotional tone scale. This one is like, like a 2 or a 3. Meaning, this isn't a make or break the relationship kind of conversation. I'm not really upset about it. It's just something I think it's important that we get more clear on our communication. Now, if it's something that really hurts our feelings, then we say, this is like a 7. It really kind of hurt my feelings, but it's not damaging to our relationship. So it's maybe like a 3 or a 4 on the importance of us having this conversation right now. I want us to have it, yes, but it's not so super important to, our relationship. And that's really been beneficial because then we can go into conversations or know that there's a conversation that needs to be had. And we know the importance of how important is it for us to have this conversation right now? And how much do I need to really put everything else aside and be like, okay, I'm here for you 100%. And the last caveat to that is that to be able to say, maybe when you come home saying, I know we were going to have this conversation when I came home or whatever, but I just need to let you know that I've got about 5 or 6 left from the day because I just spent my energy. And just being able to talk to each other like that, it's like, okay, we're not going anywhere, so we'll shelve this for another time, knowing the importance of that conversation to one another, and we'll revisit it another time. And we've always revisited. We've never put something off and never talked about it. And that's what I've always learned in my past relationships is when you put those things off and you don't talk about them, they build up, we make up stories in our head, and then we begin to believe things about our partner that's not even true based off of our own triggering responses. So,
Yeah.
anyway, that was just a side note, I guess.
I think that it goes to being fully seen and heard and feeling safe to be seen and heard. And I think for a lot of people, that is a trigger. Maybe they have never had that space. Maybe as a child, they didn't have that space. They didn't have a voice, or their voice wasn't deemed important enough. And so that can go into, relationships and everything where you attract a partner who doesn't value your voice, who doesn't value your existence in life and in important matters and your opinion. And that had been my experience. And so coming into a healthy relationship where I was learning for the first time to exercise my voice, and it didn't have to be in a defensive way or an explaining way or a justification way. I was just allowed to have a voice. I was allowed to be seen and heard, and it could be a safe place. And so finding someone, and when I say finding someone, it doesn't mean you have to go search for them. I don't believe in that at all. I believe that it will happen as you're doing the inner work on yourself. You will, as Bruce said, you're preparing yourself. You're becoming the person that you're wanting to attract in. And then the whole process is seamless if that's the approach that you take to finding that person. But then that work begins once you do come into union with that person and you really start to begin that work together of being seen and heard and allowing space for them to be seen and heard and establishing that safe foundation. And it's really important that you allow that for the other person, but that you allow that for yourself too. Defenses down. And that's where when he's talking about the conversations about triggers and those moments when you feel triggered, that's exactly what that is. You're going to feel those triggers because you've never been allowed to be in that place before, maybe. And so the other person is allowing space for you, but you're also giving yourself permission to let those guards down and all that inner child turmoil that starts to come up, and you start to feel scared or fear of abandonment or all those things that you have that has been your reality in the past. So yeah, just creating that space for someone else to be seen and heard in a safe way, because in doing that you're giving permission to yourself for that too.
And back to what I was talking about, that when you are in that place where you are feeling like you want an ideal person in your life, to understand that you are only going to be able to accept into your own heart and experience love to the level that you are experiencing that love for yourself. And so if you haven't done that work for yourself, you're not going to be able to let someone into that deeper place. So when I got to that place where I was crying for myself, like, oh my God, I love you. You've been with me for, 40 years of my life, and I'm so thankful that you've been my best friend this whole time. I had so much deep love for myself that when she came into my life, I was so open and ready to be able to receive it and give it in return.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Someone has made a comment. It makes me wonder what my triggers in a relationship would look like. And it's like awareness is number one. So I, as a parent, can speak to observing myself and being super aware of when there are times that I fall back into old patterns or habits of a previous version of Monica, or of myself in a previous relationship, or of my parents, right? Like there's that, like I don't want to grow up to be my mom. Like I love my mom and she's an amazing person, but I want the way she raised me to in some way have evolved me into another level of parenting my children. And so I'm curious for you. I mean, really, the way that you've described the way that you navigate the issues that you have in your relationship is super eye-opening. To have someone who is on the same wavelength as you. Okay, and so this is my question: is I would love to hear your take and your input for those, because I know you've worked with many people like this. For those who are in relationship with people who aren't really doing the work. If you're like that person, because we see a lot of relationships dissolve because one person is doing the work and the other person is like, man, I'm good. I mean, that for me is sort of what happened. Like it wasn't meant to be anymore. But what sort of advice do you give to those people who, they want to work to stay within the relationship? Like, is there a way to plant the seed for your partner, or do you just do the work and see the reflection in them? Do you have any input on that?
Yeah, I was having a conversation with someone recently around this very specific thing. They have found themselves in this place. And so I think there's two sides to it. First of all, there can be a place where you do grow too far, and not too far for you, but there can be a place where you have to know, I have to let this person go. But before you get to that point, or if you're not sure if you're at that point, or that's also not the only way that it has to go. I believe that you can have an open conversation with your partner. They don't have to receive it, but you have to be honest to your truth. You have to be honest to your growth and to what matters to you. How they receive it is up to them, and it will depend on their level of consciousness, but having a very honest conversation with them, and that can be in the form of a letter if you don't feel like you can say it in person, or it can be a face-to-face conversation, but there's power in writing if you're not sure If there's someone who maybe will get angry or not be receptive to what you're saying in person, then put it in writing is my advice. But and make sure you're saying it in a way that is not judgmental of them or putting them down in any way. You can say, these are the things that are important to me in my growth. I am growing in this way. This is what's happening for me. This is my experience. I want to share it with you. Are you open to receiving it? Are you open to, even if you don't know how to respond to it, are you open to me having this experience? Can you hold space for me to have this experience and this growth, even if you're not in it with me? I think just you have to have that honest conversation with your partner, because they deserve that honesty. I think it can be scary for a lot of people to have that conversation for exactly the reason that, we talked about before, that fear of losing that relationship, that fear of what happens if they can't hold space for me to grow. What happens then? Deal with the what happens then later. Deal with one thing at a time. The most important thing first is that you have that conversation, that you give that honesty, because let's say in the event that the worst case scenario happens, the relationship ends, at least you've been fully honest. It would be worse if you just continue to exist in a relationship that is not fully honest, and you're not happy. Neither one of you is happy because no one is living in honesty. You're wanting to grow, you're feeling restless, you're feeling, pulled in a different direction. Maybe that conversation is the piece that needs to happen to show your partner what's possible. You don't know how they're going to respond. Yes, it can be scary. Yes, they might respond in a way that you don't want. But if that happens, then that's the piece you need to see. You need to see their ability to show up for you or not. And showing up for you doesn't necessarily mean that they're also going to start doing everything you're doing. They might not be into the books and the podcasts and the experiences that you're into, but can they hold space for you to have that? And I think there can be a form of a healthy relationship that starts there, where sometimes this person is like, no, I'm not going to join you there, but I can let you have that. And that can sometimes be okay. And by sometimes being okay, that's entirely up to you. What's okay for you? What's okay for you? Get honest with yourself on what that is. I know a number of people who are in that place. Their partners don't fully exercise everything that they're exercising in their growth, and that is what works for them right now. So, and always that, what works for me right now. We can't think 10 years down the line. We can't think 2 months down the line. What works for me right now? What is my truth right now? So it's always starting with that conversation, being honest, being very vulnerable with where you're at and how you're feeling, and also letting your partner know what you do need from them. And I think that's important too. And here's what I need from you, and what do you need from me? Always asking that question too. So it's not a one-way street. It's not, I'm in this state of growth and you must give this to me. But can you hold space for me? And also, how are you growing? Don't just assume that they're not growing. They might be growing in ways that you don't even know of. If you're not having these conversations, you're not going to know everything that's going on with your partner. And so begin having those conversations. You might be surprised at how they respond. Their growth might not be in the same way, but maybe they're dabbling in something that you didn't know they're dabbling in. So maybe you can come together in those ways of, oh, wow, that's a really cool experience that you're having. I'm having this experience, and you're laying the groundwork for growth in your own ways, and understanding that it doesn't have to look the same. So starting there, and then also having compassion. And this is something I shared with someone recently who had gone through she had just had a really powerful weekend at this summit, and she had taken in all of this information that was changing her life. And she said she came out of that weekend with like action steps that she was now taking, and her partner wasn't supportive of that and was actually making really negative comments, letting her know how much of an inconvenience it was for the rest of the family, all of that. And I said, I said, try seeing it through a perspective of compassion. Imagine being so afraid of new experiences and so afraid of growth that you have to project your fear in the form of negativity towards someone else's experience. Imagine just being so afraid that that's all you can do. Having insecurities that are so deep and so scary and so much a part of your identity that you would rather stay stuck in them and put up that wall than actually open the door for a transformation. So having that compassionate perspective too, I think is important.
This is why I love her. She's able to talk about things in such a compassionate, gentle way. You know, this idea of having compassion and holding space for one another. She's so beautiful at creating that for people. I, on the other hand, am always coming back to like, let's talk about how it's working inside your brain and what's happening with the neurons inside your brain and what's going on with the energetics. And you know, ultimately, I think it comes down to each one of us as an individual creating our own reality as we speak, right? And so if there is a relationship that you feel like you are not growing in, again, that conversation is so vital because you may not know the growth that is happening. But, you know, there could also be something where, you know, like a garden is going to grow together, or there could be a garden trying to grow and then weeds growing over here. And that can suffocate out the growth, you know, so you're either growing or you're dying as an individual and as a couple. And you just want to accept that there are a multitude of possibilities in your life. And one of those possibilities could be starting over. And that's horrifying and scary to so many people, including myself. I've been there a few times, right? I'm 52 years old. So I've had a few, you know, relationships I had to start over from. But I'm so deeply grateful, right? Because it aligned me to grow. It aligned me to get out of the weeded garden and grow, right? Maybe I planted my seed somewhere else and was able to flourish, right? And I always try to bring it back to energy, because if you are in that relationship, like she talked about, where you're not speaking your truth and you're harboring resentment, you're lowering your own vibration to such an extent that you're now actually not even aligning with those things that you will say that you are working towards in your life. And ultimately, you have to return to the love of self, right? And be authentic with yourself. It's already been kind of proven as a new understanding that the highest vibration is being your authentic self. Gratitude used to be the number one, and it's still way up there, you know, love and gratitude and all that. But being your authentic self is the highest vibration you can have. So as she's talking about, if she's in a situation, whoever this person is she's talking about, and I've dealt with some people like this as well, if they are not being their highest authentic self, they are not allowing themselves to receive what it is that they say that they're working so hard, right? So ultimately, if your growth is the most important, then you have to really check in with, am I harboring resentment towards this person for them not growing in the way that I think that they need to? If so, you're also not creating that space to create what it is that you want. So again, I always just love the way that she puts things, because I sit there and listen to her and I'm like, man, this is so good. Right? But I can always hear my mind going.
Oops.
But I always hear my mind going of like, yeah, the energy of that is creating this, and the neurosynaptic connections inside the brain are firing because, you know, you're used to your father not listening to you, so now you're not, you know, you're just going to revert to an old limiting program where you think that your voice is not important to be heard by this person because they're triggering that response, you know, that child response to like a father figure. And those are the things that start happening inside my brain. So I love the way that we work together, because she's so compassionate. She can bring someone into this beautiful space to begin the healing work. And then I love to come in and I try to explain to them like the nuts and bolts of it, of like, and this is how it actually works, like on an energetic, scientific, neurological level, how it actually works. And we're living proof. So.
I love it. This is such a great conversation. So juicy. It's so beautiful to see. It's like, like the feminine channels it in, the masculine grounds it in. Like, how cool is that? Okay, so this is my follow-up question then. When we're talking about having this deep level of compassion for self and other, and we're talking about all of the wounding that we have over here that, yes, we have a level of awareness about, but when we're in the midst of a challenging relationship, like these are the big tests, aren't they? It's all perfect. It's all happening for us and not to us. So then this is what I want the guidance around for the audience is accessing the clarity, right? Because when you're in the midst of the trauma and the drama, you cannot access that part of you that you're working toward. And so this is where, the tangible work that both of you do really comes in. Let's talk about, if you're in a relationship, that difficult process is happening. Like, let's talk about nervous system regulation and how do we access the clarity in order to really navigate from a place of self-compassion and compassion for other within that difficult situation.
Well, I'm going to jump right in on this. This is exactly what I've done for many years. Ultimately, just like we said in the beginning of this podcast, it all comes back to breathwork for me. Breathwork is the key for me to open up the higher brainwave states, to open up the meditative state, if you will. Meditation to me used to always be this thing that was like, oh, I gotta get my mind quiet. I gotta stop thinking, right? And then I learned it was like, well, no, just become familiar with your thoughts. And then I was like, okay, so like a log floating down the river, I see the detail, now I see it clearly, and now I don't see the detail, and now it floats away. And it's like, okay, I can see thoughts come, I can see thoughts go, and I was like, okay, now I'm meditating. Man, the first time I did a really powerful breathwork journey, boom, I was so far beyond that state of meditation to where I didn't have any other thoughts because what I was experiencing had captured every bit of my attention. And this is like otherworldly. Like it was, as Joe Dispenza said, you are experiencing something more real than your waking reality, right? And so this term that's kind of used a bit is something called biohacking. And literally by the way that you breathe, whether it be inhale emphasized or exhale emphasized, you can actually reset or activate your nervous system. And your nervous system is broken down into either the autonomic nervous system is broken down either into the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight, right? You need to like run from danger, or the parasympathetic, which is rest and digest, which is the immune system, which is what we need in order to fight off diseases. Interesting thing is neither one is online at the exact same time, right? It's impossible. So if you're running from danger, it doesn't make sense to have, your energy going towards trying to fight off a disease if a saber-toothed tiger or a tiger or whatever, right, is about ready to catch you and eat you, right? So it stops all of that energy to fight off a disease and gives it to your muscles so that you can run or fight for your life if you need to. So the same thing happens in our waking life, right? When we experience a stressful situation in a relationship, right? The beautiful thing about breathwork, and this is something that I've had to deal with in my life because having PTSD from my time in the Navy as a rescue swimmer, I suffered with anger management issues. I would literally get fits of rage where I need to go and like punch a tree or something like that. I'm not proud of this, but it was my way of coping with this erupting anger. And when I discovered something that I teach now, which is the 9-breath method, it's something that we use in the veterans, hospitals with PTSD, disabled veterans to help them deal with their PTSD and anger management issues. And when you experience what this biohacking, inhale emphasized breath can do, and it re-regulates your autonomic nervous system back into the sympathetic, when you were right there in fight or flight, when you were right there about ready to become angry and enraged or freaked out or scared or whatever it is, and you instantly drop back into the sympathetic, which is rest and digest, you feel calm again. And the first time it happened to me, like I had tears of joy because I was like, couldn't understand how I went from being so angry to feeling so calm and like grateful to be able to feel calm that I was just crying because I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I have a tool that I can actually use. I'm gonna get emotional about it. I have a tool that I can actually use to control that side of myself that I don't appreciate when it shows its ugly head. And so in a relationship, when you are in the midst of that kind of a struggle, it comes back to awareness. If you can have enough awareness to see that you are being triggered in that way, for me, something such as going to breath work, my 9 breath method, every single time re-regulates my nervous system. You cannot be feeling fight or flight when you regulate your nervous system back into the parasympathetic. And in that more calm state of mind, you are able to come back and have a more clear conversation where we can take responsibility for our part of whatever that stressful situation is and be willing to confront the other person based off of what we are experiencing, based off of what we experience from them, right? It's always a careful way of wording things, and anybody knows me, knows I'm very meticulous about the way that I word things. That you want to make sure that you're not saying, oh, because you did this, I felt this, right? Because you're giving away your power to them right away. But saying, when this happened, I felt this particular feeling, sensation, belief. It seems to me that you were feeling, thinking, such and such. And to me, that's the way to re-regulate yourself so you can come back into that more kind of stressful situation, more calm down so that you can have that kind of conversation.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yeah, and this is not completely separate from what he said, but I believe in having, if you have to have your practice that you're doing on a daily basis, and for him that is his breath work. So there has to be, this is where that relationship to self is so important, that foundational relationship, right? Because you can't just, if you just go into a relationship and it's like, okay, I'm going to start practicing all these tools that they're talking about in relationship, I won't say it won't work because I can't say that, but it's going to be a lot harder. You have to start building that foundation as you are, preparing for this relationship that you're looking for. The work starts before, but having a daily practice, and breath work can be a part of that. I really recommend journaling. And those times when you do feel anxiety, whatever's coming up for you, you're feeling those triggers, you're feeling your nervous system is going crazy, and for whatever reason, pull out that journal. And that journal can be something you're physically writing in, but if you are, let's say you're at work or you're somewhere you don't have access to that, I use the notes on my phone all the time, or voice notes, whatever you have access to, go there and start getting it out. And don't censor yourself. Your journaling is for you. It is not, nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to critique it. So giving yourself that outlet where you, as you process out into your journal, you start to gain that clarity. Just start writing how you're feeling. Start writing. It's okay if it's anger and it's hatred and it's all of these negative emotions. You must feel them. You cannot run from them. You must feel them, and the importance is that you're feeling them in a safe way. You're acknowledging, to your point, what you were saying earlier about awareness. You have to have awareness that these feelings are existing for you, and then you can have awareness on how you want to act on them, how you want to respond to them, and how you want to take action. So having that awareness, you're word vomiting all over the page, whatever that is. And then what often tends to happen is you almost start to coach yourself through it without even knowing. You are letting your process come out. You're letting your experience be be validated on this paper, and then starts to come the questions of why do I feel this, why is this coming up for me, why do I feel so out of control, so anxious, so all over the place, so overwhelmed, why do I feel scared, whatever it is that you're feeling, start to ask those questions, ask them on paper, and then guess what, behind that question is going to come the answer. You have the answer on how to take action on this, on the why, on the what now. You have that answer. You have to go through the process of recognizing what you're feeling, acknowledging that your nervous system is dysregulated, acknowledging that all of this is happening. You have to go through that process of awareness in order for your awareness to find the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. All about the emotion.
Amazing. So journaling is an amazing practice. I love journaling. And what I find when I journal in the way that you describe is when you talk about the why, just want to remind everyone that it's not a why that you're accessing from your mind. You know, it's like when you talked about earlier, accessing that bigger part of yourself, like that's where all the answers are. We didn't come not knowing. We're just remembering how to remember, right? And so thank you for that. That is extremely helpful, an awesome practice to have, and to really be consistent about it, because you're holding yourself with compassion and love and witnessing yourself in all the ways that we didn't know to witness ourselves as children's, that our parents didn't know to witness ourselves. And so I would like to know, as far as the breath work goes, you talk about the breath work, and you mentioned like a 9 breath practice that you have. And is this something that we can do in the moment? I want to give another tangible tool that people can use in the moment, as far as breathing. Like when you're in that moment, what do you do with your breath to help immediately re-regulate?
Yeah, I mean, this is something, that's why people really like this 9 breath method. It's something called the warrior's breath. I'm not going to get deep into detail on it, but if you follow me on TikTok, there is some really good tutorial videos there. But basically, it's a very powerful breath in through the nose. So it's inhale emphasized. You are putting yourself into a fight or flight autonomic nervous system response. But because you are doing it consciously, that's why it's called consciously controlled breath work, right? Consciously controlled breathing. Because you are putting yourself there intentionally, right? Just like getting into an ice bath intentionally. Why would anybody ever do that, right? You are now in control of how you are experiencing this fight or flight, autonomic nervous system arousal, right? And because your body has proprioception receptors, still can't say that. You know what I'm trying to say. It will send signals to the brain. Our body's not running. We're not actually running from any danger. In fact, we're seated in a very calm position, right? The body recognizes when it's safe, right? And so it's going to send signals to your brain, and your brain is going to say, well, then liberate that energy for fight or flight into the brain. The brain is going to use that to create very coherent messaging throughout the rest of the body, right? And so when that happens, you're now creating neural pathways inside of your brain, just like the Pavlov theory. You've all heard this, right? When they ring the bell, the dog starts to salivate. Exact same thing. You're now training your nervous system, neurofiber bundles inside of your brain, that when you experience a stressful situation, you are able to then switch back to the parasympathetic. Because the way the 9 breath works is you do 9 very powerful breaths in through the nose and out through the nose. Inhale, emphasize, getting you into that hyper alert state, which it does. It makes you very more, your hearing changes, your vision changes, everything is hyper acute, right? But then you swallow down and then you exhale very slowly. First, you hold your breath for as long as you can. This is called breath retention. I'm not going to get into deep detail on that right now, but understand that when you hold your breath, to me, that's where the magic happens. That's when more oxygen and energy flows into your body than you've ever experienced probably before in your life, and it's mind-boggling sometimes what can happen. I have what I call departures, where for a moment, consciously, I know I'm somewhere else, and I'm not feeling my body. And then I collapse back into my body, and I'm like, whoa, that was amazing, right? Sometimes I feel like I'm being visited by like ancestors or something. But what you do is you hold your breath as long as you can, and then you let the air out very slowly through pursed lips. So it's like, and when you are letting the air out slowly, you are now having a longer exhale than the inhale, right? Very controlled exhale, which then this brings your regulation down into the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. Again, because you are inducing the fight or flight and then inducing the rest and digest, you're creating the neural pathways in your brain to when you're, say, driving your car and you feel a stressful situation, your body's already prone to be like, oh, stress. We're about ready to be relaxed because that's what it knows. Just like a dog salivates when it hears the bell, your body gets ready for rest and digest whenever you feel a stressful situation. And it works. It works for me all the time. I can feel a stressful situation coming on, but I can also all of a sudden get calm because I've regulated my nervous system. I've created the neural pathways in my brain to literally create that kind of situation. But anyway, in answer to your question, yes, the 9 breath is something that is very simple to do. It's a very powerful practice. 9 breaths in through the nose, out through the nose. So on the breath retention is where the magic happens, and then you let the air out very slowly with pursed lips, and it brings you back into the present moment. When you are calm and in that rest and digest, state, mental state, emotional state, physical state, you are then in the present moment. You're not worried about some past that doesn't exist anymore because it's already been proven. Whatever we think about the past is based off of our own perception and misunderstandings anyway. And the future hasn't happened yet. It's never going to be as bad or as amazing as we think it's going to be. Think about it. We get super excited about going on vacation, right? And then you get there, and don't get me wrong, your vacations are amazing and you're in a different environment, so you are being kind of induced into a little bit of a sympathetic nervous system response because everything's brand new, like if you're in a different country, and that makes you feel alive, right? But then you can like go into the hotel room and like be like, I'm still me, and I don't really feel that much different. I mean, if you're being honest with yourself, you're still the same person, just in a different location, right? So it's never quite as amazing as we're thinking it's going to be. Don't get me wrong, vacation and explore, different cultures and things like that. But the whole point of me saying this is that the future is never what we think it's going to be because it hasn't happened yet. The past is never what we remember it to be because we've created our own understanding of it anyway. So the only thing that really exists is the here and now. And when you can use something like the 9 breath method to re-regulate your nervous system and bring you back into the present moment, you are more readily able to assess situations with awareness and if you have the practice like we do, like with our morning routine, when I'm journaling, it's me having a conversation with myself. And when I have these very empowering conversations with myself, telling myself, you are a magnificent, magnetic, masculine man, right? Like I love alliteration, right? But because I speak to myself like that all the time, I walk around and people are like, dude, your energy is like, wow, right? And it's because I create that with myself. And to me, I literally feel like I'm having a conversation with my higher self, and my higher self is giving me guidance. Just like she says, there's all the answers are already there because our higher self knows the truth. And when you have those conversations with yourself, when I do my breath work, when I do my meditations, I'm in that perfect vortex. As what's your name? One you like to listen to on the podcast all the time.
I listen to so many.
Esther Hicks.
Oh.
She talks about the vortex. When you're in the vortex, that's the time to create. That's the time to manifest. That's the time to visualize. And that's when I do it. It's right after my 9 breath method, right after I've come back from a departure. Energy is still flowing through all my energy systems. And my hands are out, and I'm just like, boom, I'm creating, I'm manifesting, I'm visualizing. And, we're doing some amazing visualizations and creations together right now.
Yeah, and about the breath work, there's ways you can tap into the breath whether or not you have time to do the full 9 breath method or not. So, for those that are listening right now and thinking, but I don't know, I don't feel confident to do the 9 breath, or I don't always have time. In the moment, the breath is always something you come back to, even if it's just a matter of shutting your office door, closing your eyes, and deep breathing for a few minutes, so not underestimating the power of the breath.
something called box breath.
Yeah.
Very simple.
So simple.
Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 4 seconds. Watch.
Yeah.
Just change it.
Mm. You touched on a couple of things that really piqued my interest. And one of them is what you said about vacation. And then I want to share a specific example of something that I was able to shift quite rapidly, but just through a simple deep breath and hold in my life that has served me immensely. But first, the vacation thing. So I just want to say that it's so interesting that you bring that up. I just got back from vacation, and even joyful experiences, right, can be clouded by the nervous system memory that we have stored from the past, because I think of the past, and all of my vacations before really have been very 3D. They've been very matrix, and they've been like mom in go mode, not loving herself, doing for others. And so I was witnessing myself on vacation this time, and I kept going, how can I be more present? How can I be more present? Like, how can I really be in this now moment right now? And even though I wasn't thinking about the past, my body was in the past. And so I was doing these practices that you're talking about, especially the breath work, like how can I be super present right now and like really in tune with my physical body, and like I like the Haven, where you just kind of rub yourself and love yourself and breathe. And that was so freaking helpful. And then the other thing I want to quickly mention to the audience is something with a simple intentional breath that has changed my life in a very profound way is, I remember when my ex-husband and I, when we were going through our divorce, and we had just gotten divorced, and the feeling of fear that I had around him, not because he'd ever beaten me or anything, but because it was such a charged relationship and such a charged past. And I had so much fear around communicating with him because it never went the way that I wanted it to go, because we were like this, right? And so what would happen to me is every time I would get a text from him, I had a particular ding. I knew it was him. My body felt it immediately. And I thought, I've got to shift this. I cannot be a slave to this alert for the rest of my life and this communication. And so what I would do is I would stop, and I would take a deep breath, and I would just hold it. I would just take a deep, low belly breath, right? Signaling the parasympathetic nervous system, low breath, and then fill up into the upper lungs, fill the entire lungs. And then I would just hold it. Because when you hold your breath and you breathe low, you are telling your body, I am safe. It is a physiological, simple signal to your body and your brain that you are safe. I don't experience that at all anymore. And I thought of this because he just texted me while we were doing this. And there was no physiological response from me. It's a place of neutrality, right? And this is where clarity comes, is this space of neutrality where nothing is supercharged for us. And that's when the now moment gets so freaking delicious. So thank you for that. That is super, super helpful. The awareness around, like you say, just the simple breath, just be with your breath. Like, how often are we with our breath if we're not doing the things? Most people aren't. Most people are breathing shallow and fast. And boy, once you take that power back, like you said, it changes everything. Everything changes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. Is that, something called chronic overbreathing. My brother is dealing with it, and a lot of people in the world suffer from it, actually. And it's not what a lot of people think, where it's like, oh, you're like over breathing. You're not taking deep enough breaths, right? So just a little bit of like science or biology is that we have these little alveoli sacs inside of our lungs. And just like a water, a balloon, if you like were to put water in it and then dump it out and try to blow it up, have you ever tried to do that when you're a kid? It's really hard to pushing really hard to try and get to blow up. Whereas if you just take a balloon out of the bag, right? It's dry, blows right up, no problem. Same thing with our lungs. When we're taking real shallow breaths, like you just talked about, that deep belly breath, if you're not taking those deep belly breaths, not all of those alveoli sacs, which are fluid filled, are popping open. In other words, you're not getting as much oxygen into your lungs as you can, therefore you're not getting as much oxygen into your bloodstream as you can, therefore the rest of your body and your cellular structure is not getting as much oxygen as it can. And here's the beautiful thing that I learned in Qigong is that our blood actually pools inside of our body. Unless you're like an Olympic athlete, our blood will pool and kind of clump up. The red blood cells will clump up. When that happens, the capillaries, which are the deepest part of those blood cells that feeds the rest of the body this nutrients, the deepest portion of them is as big as one red blood cell. In other words, a clump of red blood cells gets stuck and won't go all the way down in there, right? So we're not getting as much oxygen into the rest of our body as we could, right? When you do something like a 9 breath or different kinds of breathing that excite the energy, that excite those blood vessels, it's literally been proven where they take pictures of blood vessels or blood clots, not clots, but blood clumps, right? Beforehand, and then after something like a breath empowerment, which is like a journey of a breath, those cells actually break up and they're moving a lot more single cells, and they sink down deep into the capillary beds. And that's when the body starts to tingle, and that's when the energy starts to be felt, and that's when your consciousness starts to change, because now you're feeling something in your body that you never had before. And so it becomes more real than any outside experience that you could be having, and you put your attention on that. And when that happens, where the attention goes, the energy flows. So then you literally are creating more energy within your body by putting your attention on it, and you're physiologically feeling more of that oxygen and energy throughout your body. So there's beautiful things that happen, yes, when you return to the breath, which obviously that's what I'm all about.
Absolutely.
It's better than any drug ever, isn't it? Whew!
Yeah, we call it getting high on your own supply.
Amazing. Okay, so will you guys come back? Because there's so much more that I want. We're almost at the top of the hour here, and I really want to show your water crystals, and I want to know where people can access you. But I would love to have you all back and to talk about a little bit about your individual journeys, and like that whole awakening aspect, because it's just so magical to hear that so many different stories around it. So I want to have you back, please, please, please. And what I'm going to do is I have to go grab your water crystals because I'm human and I was humaning this morning. So I effed up a little bit and didn't quite get it frozen in time. So if you're listening to this and not watching it, if you go to YouTube about 58 minutes, you'll be able to see the water crystals. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull you guys in center, and I would like for you to share with everyone where we can access your work and what you may have coming up. I would like to let everyone know that links to both of their websites are posted either in the comments or in the description, depending on where you're accessing this. But I'm going to go ahead and bring you off of mute and spotlight you while I go dip away for a second and get your water crystals.
Great, thank you.
So you can visit, like you said, my website is in the show notes, but it's rebelisticwellness.com. Rebelistic is a combination of words that I put together when I was forming my business. It's rebel and holistic, and I resonate with that because anytime we are choosing to take a holistic approach to our health and wellness and really our life, it requires a certain level of bravery, a certain level of courage to say yes to what feels right for us and no to maybe what everyone is doing around us. So instead of following fad diets and instead of doing maybe what everyone else is doing around us, we are saying yes to our authenticity. And so it requires us to channel our inner rebel. So that's a little bit of history behind the name of my business. And then you can check out my website for different wellness programs that I have, different ways to work with me in that respect, but also the retreats that I'm building. I'm building customized luxury wellness retreats. And these are available for individuals to book if you want an individual retreat just by yourself. I have that option. I also have couples retreats, and we'll be doing a lot of that together. And there's more I could talk about on that. But that's for those couples who are you're solid, you've got that good solid foundation, but you are wanting to reach what I call power couple status. So, and what I mean by power couple status is you're like, okay, we are so good on this level. How do we up level together? How do we reach that next level of relationship together? So that's the couples that we'll be working with in those couple retreats. And then also small group retreats as well are available. So you can check out my website for some of that. And then I know your site is also available.
Yeah. I'm sorry, my battery is getting a little low, so I'm getting a little nervous here. So yeah, you can find me on beacons.ai / I think it's Breathe with Baba Buddha or Baba Buddha Heals. Sorry, I always get confused. But yeah, you can find me there. I do breathwork courses. I also have a mindset transformational course. And like she said, we'll be doing retreats together. I also host a men's breathwork journey here in the St. Augustine area at the Essential Energy Spa, which is an amazing place. You can see it in my links as well. But yeah, I want to get back to this so we don't run out before the battery dies. So, wow, that's amazing. No, that's...
Okay, thank you so much. Amazing. All right, now you know where to find these lovely gems. Okay, I'll go ahead and pull up your water crystal and then we'll get this before anybody's device dies. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to share a screen and I'll send you a copy of this as well. It's not super clear on the feed. Can you, and let's see.
Yeah.
You can see that?
Yeah. That's so cool.
Isn't that cool? So I'm seeing this, like I actually see like a spiral, and I'm seeing lots of structure in the top, like kind of feather vibes or star vibes. What do you think? What do you feel?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I do see a spiral, like a direction, which is cool.
There's a very clear, it's not centered, it's off to the side, but it's almost like a very clear center that's not centered.
Yeah, there's a focal point for
Yeah,
sure.
there you go, focal point.
Yeah.
So cool. It's always different and magical. I'll send you this picture and I'll post it at some point and tag you all in it. But thank you so much for coming and spending time with us. I definitely want to have you back on so we can go even deeper, but this has been super valuable and I really appreciate all of your input and all of your shares and all of the work that you do with the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This is fantastic.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure getting to chat with you and spend some time, sharing aligned visions and passions. Obviously breathwork is something that we both feel very passionate about. So I'm glad that we've gotten to have this conversation around my passion and then getting to hear just such compassion and deep understanding of how we can really do the work towards loving ourselves with compassion and giving ourselves that open space so that we can be that way in a relationship with other people. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.